Ladies and gentlemen, Apple's global shockwave sending tremors throughout the entire planet. Are Chinese crops under attack? Have you guys even heard this story? Is China hiding numbers and suppressing voices? Fear is going to be back in the market. And do you know what the first country to potentially show signs of recession are? It's not China, it's actually Japan showing signs of recession here. We're going to discuss that as well. And are we going to correct here? And is it going to be a buy the freaking dip? Our algo levels, our final thoughts. I am Mark Melnick. This is the Newsbeat Show. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Newsbeat Show. It's kind of funny how the top companies in the world, when they have problems, are just right over here when the market is at all-time highs. Is a correction looming within the mist? I'm not calling for a bear market by any stretch of the imagination because I think those things are kind of silly, but I do think a correction um, is here. I mean, goodness knows the time is just feels like it's ready to happen. But with that being said, by watching this video, you're going to pause the next slide, read it in its entirety, and then hit play. Thank you so much for reading that. So we have a very nice, interesting agenda here today, talking about a lot of big events. An apple a day keeps the virus at bay. And we're going to talk about the Apple's global shockwaves, Chinese crops under attack, which is kind of interesting with the U.S.-China trade war, considering we want them to buy our farmers' products. What a coincidence. China hiding the numbers and suppressing voices. That should be really more of an exclamation mark than a question mark if you're believing the reports that are out there. And we're also going to talk about Japan actually in a recession right now. And the important thing is, and again, for a lot of new traders, you don't have to be an economist to know this. I'm a college dropout. I don't have a finance degree in college, and if I did have one, I don't think it would make me understand how to be a better trader in the slightest bit whatsoever. But with that being said, one of the things that really don't happen often is you don't have major world economies in recessions while others are at all-time highs. You're not going to have the US, you're not going to have a Chinese full-on market recession while the spiders and the Qs and the diamonds are just trading at all-time high and US markets and the S&P are at all-time highs. That just really doesn't happen. So when the market is at all-time highs, you almost have to keep your eyes peeled for something potentially negative happening. You can't just sit there and focus on the positive, even though I think that's a good mentality for life in general. And the same thing goes when we're in a bear market. Everybody looks for that sign, that light at the end of the tunnel that could finally climb us out of the hole. And that's how it was like, wow, back in like 2001, 2002, 2007, 2008, when you were traders, you would always focus on a little bit of good news. These companies who would report earnings, they would miss expectations across the board, but they would have like a glimmer of light, and that could cause the stock to gap up. I mean, isn't it interesting how times have changed? But let's just go right into the main story here today. We're going to talk about Apple. Pretty much just sending shockwaves throughout the entire market here as Apple comes out and warns on revenue guidance due to production delays and weak demand in China. You see, this is kind of an interesting thing. The interesting thing about this timing is because 1 year and how many days ago? Let's take a look. Let me take you back on Apple here. Up here, you silly chart. At once. Okay. Let's take you back on Apple here. And if you really go back to we have a video right here on January 2nd talking how Tim Cook is a genius for lowering Apple guidance right here. And it bottomed out at 142. The Newsbeat Live Room caught this one long. I mean, I did not hold this for a $200 move to the upside. I'll be the first to admit that, but we did catch a really sexy move in Apple, and then we were bullish on earnings right here, and we caught the gap up in Apple earnings. This is just going back to 2019, and it's very reminiscent here because on January 2nd, basically just as the new year started in 2019, call it a year and 6, 7 weeks ago, Apple came out and lowered guidance as well. and Apple was at, a multi-month low right over here, down here in January 2019, only to rally all the way to the moon. And now something similar is happening here with Apple, is they're just basically coming out again and they're warning on their revenue guidance, but it's a little bit different this time. They're not only just warning on revenue guidance due to production delays, they're warning on revenue guidance based on weak demand in China. And the weak demand in China is, you can make a very fair argument, I feel. You could come out and say, Mark, who the heck wants to go to a store? What do? You take a bus, you take a subway, you surround yourself in a crowd. There are people dying around you. The government is, on crackdown mode. Who wants to go to the store and buy the latest Apple iPhone? I mean, I did, but I live in the United States where I don't have to fear the coronavirus, at least at this juncture. It's not a logical fear for me going to the store, and it's probably not a logical fear for you, even though, the anything is possible. We did have a few cases here. Yes, I get that. But Apple in late January, I want to point out here, said that they're going to have expected revenue 63 to 67 billion dollars coming into next quarter. And what happened here was Tim Cook sort of played it off cool. And again, I think he's the best CEO on Wall Street, if you want my opinion. I said that on January 2nd. There's a video in 2019 when I called him a genius for lowering Apple's revenue guidance. People laughed at me, and then it, obviously went up and, helped drag up the entire market. But here's a very interesting thing that CEO Tim Cook says. As you can see from the range, it anticipates some level of issue there. Otherwise, we would not have a $4 billion range. The way I unfortunately read into that is it's going to be a lot worse than $4 billion, because what people are going to make an argument about, and how, and obviously you're going to have every analyst, their parakeet, their pet ferret, and everyone coming out and talking about Apple, who's an analyst in the market. Here's what they're not going to get. They're not going to get is when people don't buy the new phone right away, it doesn't mean that they're just going to buy it at a later date. So let's say, I'll make up a number. Let's say you sell 10 iPhones a day. Number's sake, right? Let's say, just for a number's sake, I know it's a lot more. Let's say you sell 10 iPhones a day. And for a month, you sell 0 iPhones, right? Let's just make the argument. So for 30 days, you sell 0 iPhones. So that's 300 iPhones that would have normally been sold. But because of this virus, you're not selling it, right? It's not like the month where everything is fine again, that 310 iPhones are sold. It doesn't really work like that. It's not like they're just going to load up in, it's not like Apple's going to have a slow quarter this time and a supercharged quarter next time because people who didn't buy it earlier are just going to buy it now. That is true somewhat to some degree, but it's also going to be false to another degree, and it's going to hurt their sales overall massively. And what people are not talking about is, besides for the Chinese not buying it based on the coronavirus, this is the parts are being made in China, and they're reopening facilities in China, but they're opening up very slowly. They're opening up very slowly, and it's a slower return to normal conditions than they anticipated. And as I mentioned before, this is the second time in 13 months that Apple had to cut its demand in China, their guidance in China based on demand, but except this time, the demand is based on the fact that people are scared to step outside their house. Apple's iPhone sales are going to drop so hard. And again, when are they reporting again? In March or April? March, I think, whatever it is. Again, even if the coronavirus is completely contained on a global level to the point where it's not a fear anymore by March, as I am telling you, it's not like they're just going to say, all right, all right, open the floodgates, and they're all going to flood in through the door and like all buy the iPhone that they were meaning to buy before. That does never happen. People will find other phones, other companies, and even worse, they're going to hold on to their own iPhone longer. They're going to hold on to the iPhone they have longer, and they're not going to get excited. You know what happened? I'll explain to you why this happens. You know what happens when with technology? What happens with technology? It decreases in importance over time. So if you have something that's technologically advanced today, in a year from now, if you actually look at the technology curve, it actually is vertical. We don't gain technology like this. It's actually just it goes up. The estimates are that technology goes up 100% every year. In English, in 1 year and 1 day from today, we will have more technology than we ever had in entire human history combined. Known human history combined. In 1 year and 1 day. That is how advanced we are. I mean, just think about our weaponry. Think about your cars. Think about everything. Think about what your I'll give you a perfect example. You ready for this one? Think about what your televisions looked like 30 years ago compared to today, when you had quote unquote stupid TVs instead of smart TVs. I mean, it's just astronomically different. And you know what's going to happen 30, 40 years from now? The children of the future, the people 30, 40 years from now are going to look back at what we have today and look at us like we're dinosaurs. They're going to be like, Netflix, smart TVs, huh? What? You still use that? Those are like relics. Those are going to be like sold in the antique store, right? Oh, that's a smart TV from 2020, right? But look, all kidding aside, when technology keeps growing, they're just physically not going to be able to sell these phones anymore. In fact, the current phone, and I'm going to give you even a bigger reason why Apple's going to drop the ball harder now than ever. And I do want to remind you just one last time before I actually tell you why this is going to be 5 times as devastating to Apple, in my opinion, than anybody will talk about, even than Apple's talking about. It'll be 5 times more devastating. Here's the fact. You want to know who wants to tell me what my new iPhone doesn't have? Who wants to tell me right now what this doesn't have? Anyone? Newsbeat Live members? Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Laxbro. I know the percentage is on the 5 key, Laxbro. We're cool, brother. But look, it doesn't have 5G. You don't have 5G on the phone. You're not going to be able to sell this garbage after the coronavirus gets cleared from being concerns in the world. Apple's going to drop the ball so expletive hard. And again, I am the person who defended them a year and a month ago. There's a video. Go read it. When Apple was gapped down massively after hours, I called Tim Cook the genius, the best CEO on Wall Street, is what I called him. This time around, sorry, brother. If this phone had 5G, I wouldn't be talking like this. I wouldn't be talking like this. The phone does not have 5G. Tim Cook, Apple's going to drop the ball so hard. And be like, wow, I knew it was going to be bad. I didn't think it would be this bad. That's what people are going to say on next Apple's earnings, because these phones are going to be absolutely irrelevant. Do you understand how irrelevant these phones will be? My new phone that I just got's going to be irrelevant a year from now. And because these phones don't have 5G technology, they're not going to sell. Wait till 5G becomes a reality to people, not just a few people, globally, a global reality. How many people are going to want to buy a 4G iPhone? That's going to be similar to the Nokia flip phones. You remember that? This is, to me, if the most valuable company in the US, whether it's Apple or Microsoft at this point, I know if Apple, one of the most valuable companies on the planet, dropped the ball this hard, how can this market continue higher? This coronavirus is a direct attack on US companies. And we're going to talk a little conspiracy, which I never do, but we'll get into that soon because it's actually important. First, Chinese crops under attack. Chinese crops are under attack. I don't know why so many people haven't heard about this, but if you haven't been watching the news, I mean, I haven't really talked about it much on any Newsbeat shows, but locust swarms were flying across Africa, decimating crops, decimating like locust swarms 2 miles wide. Could you imagine 2 miles of swarms? Not billions, t- trillions of locusts flying. Guess where they arrived now? Guess where their travelocity has taken them next? Guess where the Priceline negotiator sent them? Give you one guess. As if they didn't have enough problems. China. China. The locust plague swarm is reaching the border of China. And it ravaged millions of acres of crops across East Africa, and now has been spotted finally reaching the Chinese border. I kid you not, this is like biblical times of ancient Egypt. This is what it looks like to me. I mean, you have to draw the correlation with the virus and the locust, right? They say there are billions of insects. The truth is they have no idea of measuring how many there are. I've heard other things say trillions, but they pretty much decimated the country of Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia, which has been described as the worst plague for decades. And those are those little SO guns. Um, they're reaching China. And as if China did not have enough issues, they're claiming their modern technology and their sufficient stocks, which is their food stocks, which have been seen in Africa, will prevent any widespread damage. Nonsense. Nonsense. What are you going to do? You're not going to have enough time to genetically modify all your crops to be anti-locust. And guess what? Locusts have been known to eat genetically modified crops. I mean, what are you going to actually do in this situation? Spray Roundup all over it? I mean, what are you going to do? This is going to just chew right through China. You can't stop something like this. So China, besides for suffering from this whole coronavirus thing, is now having crops under attack. And we all know that fear moves the market, ladies and gentlemen, which brings me to my next step here. Are China hiding numbers and suppressing voices? Well, you all heard about the 10-cent mistake. 10 the 10-cent coronavirus numbers. And if you just go literally online, there was a screenshot over from Tencent, right over here. I'll show it to you. I don't, I maybe speak a little Mandarin. I can't read it, but basically showing um, that there's just an obnoxious amount of people infected. This is actually old, from February 1st, and it shows 154,000 people infected. So they also show the death toll is 24,589, which is much, much, much different than the numbers that China is releasing so far. So with that being said, they also have this dude. Basically came out and accused him of a corona. This guy came out and accused President Xi, China's leader, as covering up. He's been detained, and who the heck knows what's happening to him. He's a prominent Chinese legal activist, and he went silent. They detained him, and his girlfriend, another social activist, went missing. Isn't that lovely? What is my point? Um, I don't know who this person is, but the bottom line is you are spreading fear throughout the entire world. And when you spread fear throughout the entire world, that is the reason for the markets to correct. Fear index. So you're silencing people who are talking out about the virus. You are literally detaining people. If you see pictures and videos from Wuhan where this virus is just, again, just absolutely destroying people's lives, people are being paid right now, and this This is, not even an opinion anymore. This is being confirmed in China. They're paying up to, was it 1,000 yuan, which is over 150 bucks, if you rat out your neighbor for potentially having a coronavirus. They'll pay you money. Can you imagine that in the United States? Imagine that, ladies and gentlemen. If you rat out your neighbor for being sick, we'll pay you money. What do you think happens to the neighbor if they're willing to pay you in a very, very poor province of China? I mean, you don't have the Apple manufacturing facilities. There's zero of them located in the Wuhan province. What do you think happens when a government wants to pay you money to rat out your neighbor? What do you think they do to your neighbor? These people are being dragged to military hospitals. They're losing access to their internet. Think about that for a second. This is a first world country. This isn't a tiny country off the coast of whatever continent ruled by a dictator. I mean, we're talking like 1 point, what is 5 bill, 1.5 billion people, 1.4 billion, depending on which numbers you read. So this is going to inject fear inside the market. This is exactly what you need for a correction, is fear. You see, I was thinking about when North Korea was firing nukes into the Sea of Japan, there was no fear. People didn't really think that North Korea would actually attack somebody because of a million reasons, which I'm not going to get into, but nobody was really scared of it, so the market kept going up. This is actually scary. This is actually scary. And guess what? There is already a country that is suffering from a recession right now, and it's a real large country. And we're going to go into Japanese economy sinking as Japan's economy shrinks 6.3% as sales tax increase cools consumption. Productivity is down. Coming right out of the Wall Street Journal, Japan's economy is shrinking because the coronavirus outbreak is hurting tourism and production. So while percentage-wise of humanity might not being, negatively affected because less than a micro percentage of 1% of humanity is infected with the virus, thankfully that low, it's causing financial shockwaves through the market. And whether you want to call this SARS or whatever is irrelevant. If they're shutting down Chinese factories, if people are not going to Japan, guess who else is going to suffer? How many people want to hop on an airliner to Asia? I'm not scared, Mark. There's likely nothing going to happen. You're right. But what if 2% of people who take those airlines throughout Asian countries felt differently? What if it was 3% of people? Realize what that would do to the airline's profits? Whoosh. They're on very low margins, ladies and gentlemen. They cannot afford that. So you're risking airlines falling. Why are airlines falling? Look, already people aren't wanting to go to Japan. It's being, reported right here in the Wall Street Journal. And look at this one. This one is actually a good statistic there. Check out this graph. You see this graph? It shows a quarterly change in gross domestic product annualized. Look what happened in 2020 so far because of the coronavirus. And even though people are saying it's temporary, which I believe, do not underestimate the everlasting damage that is caused by this. I mean, even with Apple, you could say, yeah, Apple's still going to sell iPhones in the future. They're still going to be big, Mark. Yes, Captain Obvious, I appreciate your insight. But these garbage phones are not going to be sold. And you know what they're going to do with them? They're going to melt them because they have gold, palladium, all this other rare earth metals and crap in it. They're going to melt them down. They're going to make 5G phones. And all those 4G phones, those huge bulks, those pallets and pallets and pallets of phones, they're just not going to sell. Period. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to delay releasing a 5G phone so they could sell this garbage while 5G is out. Hey, 5G is out. Apple's not offering me a 5G phone. I want 5G. Bye bye, Apple. Keep in mind, it's the third largest cell phone seller in the world. It's not first or second, even after the issues with Huawei. So Apple's going to have to jump right into 5G, which they already have scheduled. They're not going to break that schedule, in my opinion. Japanese in a recession, airlines are going to get crushed, tourism is going to get crushed, Apple iPhone sales are drowning. Is it possible? Is it possible that we just keep climbing up? I guess anything is possible in this market, right? So I ask, BTFD, buy the freaking dip, is a correction here? Well, this is a very interesting question, if a correction is here. It's hard to say, and I think it made the market really weird. It changed and evolved the market recently, and even though, I'm able to, practically make money every day, made money every day last week, week before, whatever it was, just looking at the environment like this right now, trading has changed. I literally did a Valentine's video with if you're struggling in the current market, I literally gave you a video on how to game the analysts. I actually did a bunch of videos this week. Newsbeat Live members got additional content, lessons on bull and bear flags we did. But for you guys on YouTube, for you guys on Facebook, check it out. We gave you Newsbeat Show 548, which teaches you how to be consistently profitable in the current market environment. We talked about psychology, a Newsbeat Show 549, which basically says why your trading rules are meant to be broken and why you don't follow your rules. Isn't it funny when people are like, they set you a set of rules? Did you know that 100% of human traders, not robots, but human traders break those rules? And guess what? It's a healthy thing. Your brain is trying to prevent you from getting hurt. That's why you break the rules. Instead, you're taught that you're stupid and you're dumb and you have no discipline, right? And that's why 97, 98% of traders fail because all us human beings are just a bunch of undisciplined dummies who don't know what we're talking about. We don't know what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. It's everybody else everybody else. All these traders are fools. Look, I'm making money. Here, let me flash you my P&L. Let me flash. I took a flight on a private jet. Does he own it or did he just buy a ticket? Haha, you'll never know. Uh, Look, I literally show you why your trading rules are meant to be broken. That's Newsbeat Show 549. Watch it, disagree with it if you will. I highly doubt you will. It definitely brings value. Not only that, we shared with you our Newsbeat Live picks so far, our earnings picks. We give you picks based on company reports, company forward projections combined with the technical analysis. If you followed everything that we're doing based on our rules, you could be up over $75,000 at the moment right now. That could be your potential total gain. We don't pick a ton of names. We pick pretty few names comparatively. I mean, these are all the names we've picked so far this earnings season. We added a couple more to the list recently. I even share, um, other names that I'm picking for you this week. Again, that's Newsbeat Show number 550. And how about the levels for tomorrow? Market should be gapping down, obviously. I didn't look at the futures last, but they were up and then down after the whole Apple shenanigans. Futures are down at the moment. Here are tomorrow's levels today. They don't always hit, but when they do, I tend to have an easier time making money by buying off the support levels and shorting or buying puts on the resistance level. And I'm just going to share with you my final thoughts overall in this market. This has been the most resilient market that I have ever seen. And there are a lot of people with a lot more experience than me. Look, I get it. I'm going on my 21st year. We have people in the Newsbeat Live Room, which have been in this market over 50, 60, 70 years even, which is just, I can't even fathom that. And they've never seen anything like this either. You see, we are told that history repeats itself. I think that's a lie. I think that's a mathematical conundrum of just basically sharing that if something happens, odds are that'll happen in the future. And if I say history repeats itself, I'll never be wrong because it just it either happened and I was right or it didn't happen and Oh, wait, it will happen in the future. History does not repeat itself when it comes to logically thinking about the stock market. Yes, you might have a recession. Yes, you'll go up and you'll go down. And yes, I think it's inevitable that the US market will go into another recessionary period sometime in the unknown future. And yes, I think it's inevitable that we're going to rally all the way back to all-time highs yet again, inevitably in the future. I've seen this market even in my short 2021 years, or short, or maybe let's just call it modest compared to some, or average, or call it whatever you call it, Susan, if it makes you sleep better at night. But at the end of the day, you look at the market here, we can't just sit and go up forever. It's impossible to think that. And while I don't think it's a good idea to be betting short on the market, I'm not the person going out there saying buy puts. I am going to be the person there just saying trade smart and trade what works every day. And no, ladies and gentlemen, I am not being vague, because if you watch Newsbeat Show 548 right now, you would see exactly how I plan to make money every single day this coming week for 4 days, since today is Monday and there was no trading. Trading does not have to be a difficult task. I think traders try to oversimplify things to the point where it hurts them, and traders try to overcomplicate things to the point where it hurts them. There's a fine level of simplicity in the market. Basically, if I could come to you and say, with every name that you are watching last week, for example, show me one thing that would have made you money 70, 75, 80% of the time. If you could tell me what that one thing is, you have solved the current puzzle of how to capitalize in the market. I would rather have one awesome strategy than 10 average to slightly above average to slightly below average strategies working for me at any given time. That is how you remain consistent. That is how you become successful. Do you want more from me? Did I not give you enough tonight? Well, good news. You can get my free ebook today, a psychology ebook, which talks about trading, talks about parts about trading that nobody else enjoys talking about. It's absolutely free. It costs you nothing. I guess it would take your time to read it, but I'm hoping that would be time well invested. There's a link in the description for that. There's a link in the description for so much more than that as well. I hope you guys enjoyed the Newsbeat show. Happy trading, make money. I'll see you guys tomorrow on the Newsbeat Live trading broadcast. Have a wonderful evening.